If your partner is constantly lying in your marriage or relationship, you may be tempted to do what a lot of people suggest, which is to do things like expose them or call them out on their lies. But if you've ever tried that, you'll likely know how badly it usually goes. So in this video, I want to break down what to do instead. Now, I can think we can all relate to how hurtful and frustrating it is to have someone lie to you, especially in a relationship, to feel so betrayed by your partner. But if you want to stop lies for good in a relationship, I'm going to dig into why you shouldn't call out lies, and I'm going to talk about what things you can do very differently. So the first thing to do is don't assume that this is your partner's character. And I know how difficult that can be in the moment, because when you're being lied to, all you can think about is how they're doing this, and your brain starts to look for all of the times that they may have lied or have lied in the past. So I get how easy it is to assume this. You know, what's the first thing you think of when you found out someone's lied? They're a liar. The automatic reaction is always this one action defines their character. They are a liar. Now, I want you to think of a time when you lied. To a friend about why you were late, to a parent about what you thought of their cooking, to your partner about what you thought of their cooking. Think about the last time that you lied. And don't say that you've never lied, because that in itself is a lie, because everybody does lie. Now, when you lied, does that make you a liar? No. So think about why people lie. They lie because they don't feel safe in expressing the truth. They don't feel like it's an environment where they're going to get positive reactions to what they're about to say. And it's important to remember this, because this is actually a bias that we have called the actor-observer bias. And the actor-observer bias is where we essentially hold a bias against people to a different standard. So we hold other people's actions as a reflection of their entire personality, that everything that they do is because of their character. Whereas for ourselves, we excuse our actions because of the situation around us. So we basically give ourselves an out because of the environment around us. So for example, think about when you lied to your teacher about why your homework was late. It's because the teacher historically blew up at kids that didn't finish their homework. You didn't feel safe in saying, hey, I just didn't do it. Or think about when you lied to your partner last, or to your parent. It's because you thought that the reaction would be really negative. So this is emotional safety. You don't feel emotionally safe to tell the truth. So when we hold on to the actor-observer bias, we essentially disregard the environment and the situational aspects of the lies, and we simply blame their character. Whereas everybody lies because of situations. So it's easy to forget that. So the first thing to avoid, assuming that this is your partner's character, because the likelihood is that this is simply an environmental, a situational event, which is why they feel like lying in these instances. Next, it's important to not take lies personally. When our partner lies, it's an action that they take for themselves. They take the action and they take it for themselves because they don't feel safe in telling the truth. So it's important to remember that they are doing these actions for them. This has nothing to do with you. They just don't feel safe to tell the truth. You know, often we can feel like we are being betrayed, that we are entitled to hear the truth from someone. But the fact is that if your partner is lying, that is an action that they are choosing to take, and they are doing it to protect their feelings. Notice how you are not in this equation whatsoever. But the fact is that this is all about them. And that is not a bad thing. It simply just is. But disconnecting that lie from yourself will help to actually be able to create a much stronger environment for them to be able to express themselves in the future and prevent lies from happening in the future. So that's why it's important to not take lies personally. So next, stop seeing lies as bad things. Now, I know immediately people will probably jump into the comments saying, of course they're bad things, they're unhealthy, this is toxic. But you know, I understand that feeling. I'm not saying that your relationship should be filled with lies. But think about it this way, a lie is actually an expression in itself. And if you know how to handle this expression of somebody else's emotions, then it can be very, very powerful, which I'll get to a little later on. But as we spoke about before, people lie because they don't feel safe telling the truth. So if you do think that your partner is lying, then you seeing it as a bad thing, then you will be feeling like a victim of these lies. You'll be interacting with your partner like you are a victim of their lies. And all of that emotion on your side and that interpretation will be coming out as you're speaking with them. And that in turn will destroy more emotional safety within the relationship. So if you're interpreting a lie as a bad thing, it's going to come out in the way that you speak with your partner. So for now, I want to give you this quote from Hamlet. There is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. And this is because everything is subject to our own interpretations. And if you choose to interpret lies as a bad thing, then you will start to respond to lies in a bad way, in a negative way, in a toxic way. Whereas if you see a lie as an expression of your partner and as an opportunity, then there is something different that you can do with it and start to turn the relationship around in a more positive direction. Ultimately, these toxic behaviors such as lying and gaslighting, all of these things come from a very similar place. Once you start to deeply understand why these behaviors happen and you start to react differently and encourage different behaviors, then you'll find your partner won't need to have these toxic behaviors within the relationship. And you can start to turn that relationship around. And this is exactly what I do with my members. And many members found that their relationships have started to turn around and their partner's behavior has started to change. And they've started having much healthier, deeper conversations than they've ever had before. And if you do want to become an Ultra Normal member, then join me on my free relationship bootcamp, where you'll learn the skills to build yourself a thriving relationship too. Click on the link in the description down below to take the next step. Now, the biggest mistake that people make is that they think that exposing a lie will solve all of the problems, getting back at them and forcing that lie to be upfront in their face. So people often gather all of this evidence of the lie, all the proof that they need, and they lay it out like some sort of intervention. They make this grand gesture to catch their partner in a lie. Now, if you've done this before, I would love to hear from you as to how it went, because usually this ends in more toxicity within the relationship, shouting, accusations, your partner feeling betrayed. So why is that? That's because when your partner is scared to tell you something, they're worried about the consequences of telling the truth. And usually this is because historically they've given their opinion, their ideas, their feelings in the past, and they've received negative reactions. So over time, they've realized that they can't really express themselves fully. This is, as we mentioned before, this is called emotional safety. But because there's broken emotional safety, they feel the need to keep the truth for themselves. Because if you think about it, when you tell a lie, you're worried about the truth being received badly. So when you as the other partner expose the lie, you call it out and you bring all this evidence as to why they're a liar, why they're a bad person and how they betrayed you. This is the exact reason why they chose to lie in the first place. This is their exact fear and this worry. So in punishing, in a punitive approach, so your intent is to show your partner, hey, here's why you shouldn't lie, bad things happen. But what it actually reinforces is, hey, here's what happens when I learn the truth, bad things happen. So exposing a lie actually does the exact opposite of what you think it does. This destroys emotional safety and it creates an even bigger atmosphere of feeling unable to tell the truth. So even though it may work in this moment, it will lead to more and more lies further down the road. It creates an atmosphere where they don't feel safe to express themselves and to tell the truth. So how do you actually stop lies? What do you do instead? Well, it's important to switch your thinking from short term to long term. If you think about it this way, if you are focusing on the lie rather than the reason for the lie, then that will tell your partner that you're more interested in catching them out rather than wanting to understand them and their feelings. So if your partner doesn't want to speak about these things or have a conversation, simply see it from their perspective and understand why they aren't wanting to open up and leave the conversation for another day. After all, this is a long-term relationship. So focusing on the long-term goal of building the relationship, building that safety in the right ways, not by rushing through it. It's important to start focusing on a different area. Focus on crafting an emotionally safe environment. So think of emotional safety as kind of like a greenhouse. When your partner expresses their emotions, they want to make sure that it's protected from all of the elements, right? So the more that you show that you can handle your emotions, even when it's difficult to hear the truth, the more positive interactions there are, the more of a positive environment there will be for your partner to express theirs. If you start to develop and cultivate an emotionally safe environment, then your partner won't feel the need to lie. But again, the more you try to push for a lie, the more they'll feel pressured to lie. And the important thing is that you can start to create safety on subjects proactively. So you don't need to wait for something to happen in the moment to start creating a safe environment. If you proactively create emotional safety and you do it consistently over time, then your partner will start to open up. So if your partner is currently lying to you, then rather than exposing the lie, you can start to create the emotional safety by validating why they may not feel fully safe opening up to you, why they may not feel fully safe in telling the truth right now. So you can say, hey, I think I can understand why it may be difficult to open up to me sometimes, because in the past, I don't think I've been the best with my reactions. Is that maybe something that you're feeling? And you build emotional safety by building the skill of being able to validate deeply. You know, it can be very easy to think, well, I validate my partner's feelings by saying I understand. But deeply validating someone and really getting them to feel understood requires a lot more than simply saying I understand. So if you do want a deeper dive on validation, then I will leave you with this video right here. I'll see you over there.